today. And we welcome to the program now Colonel Ghannon Burton, U.S. Marine Corps retired and candidate for U.S. Senate in the state of Mississippi. Colonel, thanks for joining us today.
Gerard, thank you. It's good to see you again. It's been a while since
You
I was on
bet.
your show, but I appreciate all you do for Mississippi and frankly, just keeping people informed and keeping the conversation going.
Appreciate that, Colonel. Really do. So, your candidacy for United States Senate, man, that's jumping right in there. Congratulations on that. What motivated you to jump in this race?
Well, if you remember, our last interview, I know you do thousands of these. I only do a couple on the radio. We kind of talked about what was going on in Mississippi and what kind of time of day it is here in this country. And frankly, I see my country being destroyed, and I see a federal government that is out of control and not working for the American people. And we kind of talked about this. We set up a group called Mississippi for America First after I retired, and I went around the state and traveled to most of the counties in the states and talked and did radio interviews and trying to get pressure on our federal elected leaders to stand up and call out the madness that we see in Washington, D.C. Because at the end of the day, we need them to hold the government accountable to serve us, and that's just not happening right now. And I waited the last second. Frankly, I was hoping you were going to jump in there, and when you didn't in October, I said, I've waited as long as I can. I've tried my best to get our federal elected leaders to use the microphone we gave them to be on the national stage, pushing back and visible against this madness, because it gets demoralizing down here in the state of Mississippi when you see a federal government that is allowing inflation to get out of control, when you see a border that's wide open, when you see your citizens dying of fentanyl overdoses, when you see just, this transgender madness and all this stuff, and then you don't see the guy that said he wanted to be there and would fight for you actually pick up his microphone and fight. And so at this point, it's just time to go. I believe we can make a big difference. And frankly, if we can just shine a light on the demons in Washington, D.C. that are enacting these policies that are destructive to our country, I think it'll drive them back under the rocks. And I think it'll make a big difference. And there's some good senators in other states out there that are doing good work. I appreciate Tommy Tuberville. I appreciate Ron Johnson. And if my senator, my senior federal representative, was acting and visible and fighting back against this, whether it's corporate oligarchy or whatever you want to call it, but frankly, foreign influences that are destroying and disrupting, our nation, I wouldn't have to do this. So here we are. I'm in the fight. I think we can do better, and let's do this. Talk to me.
So, Colonel, do you have some specific concerns, call them grievances, about Senator Wicker, some of the votes he's cast, or maybe just not doing some things? I mean, you alluded to that somewhat in your opening commentary there, but specifically, do you have some concerns and feel like there's things he should be doing that you believe you would do should you be elected?
Yeah, well, specifically, he voted against Trump's border wall. He went against a lot of the policies that were there. And this is Mitch McConnell and that power structure in Washington, D.C., which kind of makes up a uniparty. And President Trump, I believe, is going to get reelected here. I think he won last time. And I think that, I'm very open about it. I believe the election was stolen in 2020. 65% of American people believe that, 85% of Republicans. One senator, Cindy Hyde-Smith, didn't vote to certify the election because I believe she believed it was rigged, like most Americans do. Senator Wicker did vote to certify the election. He voted against Trump's border wall there and then voted for Joe Biden's Green New Deal, which is driving inflation through the roof. He voted for all the omnibus bus packages and all those things. And, and I understand why he took some of the votes because of the money that came to Mississippi. But at the same time, if we drive this ship into an iceberg, then, Senator Wicker will probably get you the best seat next to the captain at the table on the Titanic. I want to get you on a Liberty ship and get you from New York safely to England and back. And that's kind of where we are right now. And if these were normal times and normal circumstances, I wouldn't be doing this. But I'm just seeing a country that frankly is coming apart. And you're starting to see a complete degradation in all of our institutions. Look at the Justice Department. He should be talking about that on the Senate floor, about how corrupt the Justice Department has been and how it's been weaponized against the American people. He should use that microphone and that voice to drive them back under the rocks. He should stop activity in the Senate until they shut down these politicized investigations into a presidential candidate, which has never happened before. In our history, we've allowed and normalized deviance to a point where people have lost so much faith in their institutions. For the first time in my lifetime, we've got a recruiting crisis where I think the Army's looking at maybe only making 75% of its recruiting goal. And why is that? Well, if the majority of Americans believe their election was rigged, which they do, and I know it was, And then you have a woke military where all this leftist theory is allowed to make itself into the institutions, and people see that. And then you have a vaccine mandate, which is still out there with a vaccine we know that doesn't keep you from getting COVID, doesn't keep you from spreading COVID. And oh, by the way, we now know there's harms and effects and bad effects, including 300% increase in myocarditis, 300% increase in miscarriages among our military women, and 1,000% increase in heart failure from military pilots. I mean, these numbers are obscene and absurd, and he is the ranking member on the Armed Services Committee. Now, he'll say, hey, if you elect me, I'll be the chairman. Well, he could stop business in the Senate now with the voice that he's got. And if he couldn't, he could at least be visible on the stage pushing back against the stuff that is going on up there. So, specifically with Senator Wicker, I have a lot of respect for his service. I have respect for the man and his family. But the fact of the matter is, he's not fighting and he's not meeting the fight that these times require. And so I think, I didn't want to do this, but I just feel compelled to step in and get it done. And I believe I can make a huge difference. Why? Because I can be a voice of reason against insanity. And if we weren't dealing with insanity in this country right now, I certainly wouldn't be doing this, because I love, being back here in Mississippi with my grandkids and all that. And being up here on the farm as snowed in as we are, it's still a blessing because we're well prepared. And like Mississippi, we know how to deal with this stuff, right? So I like what we're doing. The only problem is I can't see my kids getting to grow up in a free country if we continue down this path. I served in the Marine Corps. My grandfather served in the Marine Corps. My son served in the Marine Corps. There's no way in heck right now would I let my grandchild go into the Marine Corps based on the vaccine mandates, the wokeness that is being pushed on, this leftist theory that has politicized the military, and it's basically turning us into I think they want to kind of turn us into stormtroopers who just follow orders and that are insane, like poisoning the entire United States military with a vaccine that clearly was unnecessary and doesn't work.
Gotcha. Okay. So the senator, of course, as you alluded to, would promote the fact that he's in line to be chairman of the powerful Armed Services Committee, and that's a lot of stroke, and that's just based on the fact that he's been there a long time. I don't necessarily agree with that process, honestly. I think it just ought to be the best person and not be totally based on seniority. That's just a side opinion, but he's going to tout that. How would you respond to that? You would be a freshman and would not likely be in line for any sort of powerful committee chair appointment, even if the Republicans should take control of the Senate.
Right, but look at Tommy Tuberville, for instance. Right, he's just come into office, and everyone knows that he actually stood up and fought, and the entire D.C. swamp went against him visibly in this kind of information warfare age that we're on. And what did that do? That gave a lot of moral courage to a lot more people to stand up and fight. Now, with Senator Wicker taking over, if he was to take over that committee, all of a sudden, do we think that now, when he's been sitting there, with a bat in his hand, watching these pitches go by, and I'm sorry, I made a golf swing, a bat in his hand, with the pitches, letting those pitches go by, that all of a sudden he's going to pick up and he's going to start pushing back against this DC swamp. And for me, when I look at Senator Wicker, I think what has happened up there is that DC makes it very comfortable for people to go along with whatever that cartel is pushing through at the time. And I think they make it very uncomfortable for you, like they did Tommy Tuberville, when you push back against these leftist agendas and the madness up there.
Yeah. So you've said you've traveled the state. What sort of reception have you received, Colonel? What are folks saying about taking on an entrenched incumbent?
It's been really rewarding, and seeing people basically waking up and becoming more positive. When I first started this, when I talk about a vaccine, you'd see people cringe and shut down, and that was a year and a half ago. But now people are like, yeah, I've seen injuries. I've had friends who have injuries with this. When we talk about the two-tier justice system and the things that were going on with January 6th, we were talking about that 18 months ago, and then people would kind of they would kind of shut down by it. They would kind of look away with some kind of cognitive dissonance. But now it's only onesie-twosie people that aren't ready to absorb the amount of corruption that they're actually dealing with here. And it's tough. It's tough to look at your country, in this light. But if you see what's happened in this country, when you start explaining to folks, the life expectancy in the United States has went down 3 years in the last 3 years. That hasn't happened since World War II. the life expectancy has went up our entire lifetime. So unless you were alive when Pearl Harbor happened, and then all the combat that was involved in World War II, you haven't seen the life expectancy in the United States go down. How did that happen right after 2020? Some people say it was COVID. Well, it wasn't just COVID. It was our reaction to COVID. It was our lack of using therapeutics, because we've allowed corrupt drug companies to basically own our media and put perverse incentives into the system.
We're out of time, Colonel, but we certainly appreciate you coming on the program, talking about your campaign, and best of luck to you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Go to burtonforussenate.com. You can help me out there, or you can buy Mississippi Top Gun, which we wrote, in order to tell the story. Thank you.
Folks, we're coming right back in the Element Well.